Welcome to Tales from the NOC, going public in Asia. So the title of the talk is due to this is the first year at the Asia show where we have had a public NOC where you can come in and paw at the glass and see us on the other side, looking at packets and logs and stuff. It's terribly exciting. Please come see us. So we'll walk through, some of, I guess, the history and the architecture, and then we'll get into some of the interesting things that we found at this show or other shows, and the type of things that we're looking for. So let's go. All right. So who are we? So my name is Neil Weiler. I'm better known in the community as Grifter. I've been with Black Hat, running the network operations for the last 16 years. By day, I do threat hunting for RSA, but by night, I do this, as well as I'm part of the Black Hat CFP and training review boards and the DEF CON review board. And I also run all of the contests and events for, and the demo labs for DEF CON as well, among other things locally, help run the hackerspace, all that. And then there's Bart.
And there's Bart. So I'm Bart Stump. By day, I can't believe you left that. Twitch streamer, apparently. Don't go look for me. You're not going to find it. But currently in between, we'll say. 11 years here at Black Hat. Black Hat Training Review Board, DEF CON Goon, 801 Labs, board member as well. Do quite a bit locally. And pretty involved in the community. So here we are.
But the team is not just the two of us. So we, at the smaller shows, at the international shows, we have a much more scaled down team than we do at the US show. At the US show, it is the two of us and then 21 industry professionals who all come out and do things. Here, it's the two of us and then 2 industry professionals, and then our extended team. And when we say extended team, we mean all these logos up here. So we do have partners, and we do consider them part of the team because they're not sponsors of the NOC. There are no sponsorships of the Black Hat NOC. You can't say like, oh, hey, Grifter, I want to do this, or Bart, can we put our gear in there? We'll give Black Hat, $50K or something like that. That's not how it works. We go out and find what we consider to be the best solutions for what it is that we're trying to accomplish here at the show, and then those shows get added into the NOC. Sometimes we will try things out, I guess.
Or even, we'll talk about it a little bit in the sense that we're cleaning up what we call the partner program and kind of how we use that to be able to see some other technologies, even if it's just something that we're testing, like you said, to see how it works. And if we can get some interesting information and see how a new technology works, they can get some FaceTime, if that's not even what it is, that's the wrong word. But yeah, there's definitely a lot that we get to play with technology, but this is our very tight core team that we're working with now, and kind of the technology, as Grifter said, that we've handpicked and really made a piece of our team, and it is definitely a team. We all work together. These guys are all in there working together and making these solutions work together as well. So it's definitely not just sponsorship, people throwing money and gear at us by any means.
It is gear though. We do need
lots
the gear.
Of that. Lots
we need the gear. So the way this happened was essentially we used to roll our own with everything. Everything was done with open source stuff. We had a PF, and we were running OpenBSD boxes. We had a Socris box in every training class. We had custom scripts to call home and tell us that they were still alive somewhere out there on the network. And at a certain point, it just didn't scale. We were like, this is ridiculous. And it was actually at one of the US shows that we said, oh man, maybe we should get some enterprise level gear. We're never going to get Black Hat to buy a couple $100,000 worth of gear for the NOC though. So how can we do that? Let's go talk to a vendor in the business hall and see if they'll be willing to throw us some gear, and we'll say yay, we use this gear in the NOC. And so we went and approached somebody the first time. We were like, would you like to? And they were like, yes. Yes, we would. What do you want? How much of it do you want? And where do we send it? And so we were like, oh, we might be onto something. And so this is who we ended up with. You want to tell them what each one provides?
Yeah, absolutely. So Palo Alto is our main firewall edge device, the main security as far as ingress egress to the internet. RSA is using quite a few things now. We've got their identity suite and their basically whole net witness suite using some endpoints around registration and other things like that. Basically providing all the visibility and the insight into what we're looking at. Ruckus is our main Wi-Fi provider, and what they're all your general attendee Wi-Fi, your training classes, and all that kind of stuff. If there's anything Wi-Fi, that's off of Ruckus. Gigamon's giving us the tap solution so we can get the visibility to all those different solutions so we can see that and see what's going on. My Republic is providing our bandwidth out here. And then Cisco is actually providing us with the Umbrella and OpenDNS suite. So outside of their networking gear, it's all the security piece that we're using and what we're going through with them to look into DNS and other threats that come across the network there.
So this is where we started, or at least where I started. My first international Black Hat was the Black Hat Asia show in 2003 across the water here at the Mandarin, which you can see a picture of the NOC there in the lower left-hand corner. That's Michelle and I in all of the NOC. Like it's like
that was the hallway. It was like a shelf in the hallway.
It's a shelf. And then there was like a router and like an AP. Like that was pretty much it. But yeah, I don't know if you guys know that guy there. Do you guys know SK Chong? All right. Well, he's competing in the CTF that we had that year, and he's about to win it. He doesn't know that yet. Now he knows. But
15 years
because it's 15 years later. So obviously today a little bit has changed. Gosh, that is terrible. It's very dark. If you want to see it dark in person, just come over to the NOC. We're off the hallway. You can come inside. You can't come beyond the glass, but you can come inside. And essentially, I mean, we have a fishbowl that we're sitting in this year, but all the stuff that you see is what was behind closed doors previously. So last year we were all the way at the end of the hall, and then all the way at the end of the hall at the end of the hall. So we were like in a corner, which is where we're comfortable because we're nerds. But they were like, well, we really like what you guys do at the US show. We'd love to let people see the NOC. And so there it is. So there's a lot of displays in there with a bunch of different stats. We've got dashboards from RSA, Ruckus, and Palo Alto up in there, as well as OIP running to show some of the traffic flow. And if you want to come in and check that out and see what some of that information is, and you have any questions, just ask us when you come in. We're actually immediately following this talk, we're going to have a tour in the NOC where again, you can just like paw at it and then be like, what's that? And then we'll answer your questions if we don't answer them at the end of this session. But we don't want you to think by looking at this, if you can even see what it is, by looking at this impressive display that we've forgotten where we came from. Because this is how we set things up in the room off to the side of the NOC. Like that's our sweet rack set up there, which is, that's 2 push carts. That on the left is the Ruckus, Palo, and Gigamon gear, and then on the right is the stack for RSA. You can see we're very concerned about that equipment by the cup of coffee that's sitting on the edge of the cart.
No cardboard
there.
In the data center.
Yeah, so it's still a little bit glued together, but obviously just with a higher end level of gear. So let's talk about that gear and what it is just a little bit more. I don't know how much you can say about what we have set up at this show because it's not even close to over.
Yeah, so normally the interesting thing is, so we wanted you guys to know that we're doing it, obviously, so that you can come see it and kind of bring some attention and let you guys know that you can come in. We normally do this at the end of the shows. We're literally the last talk, and then we go rip stuff out. So we tell you a little bit more than we might normally, like right now, because you've got a whole nother day. So we can talk about this a little bit, but certainly won't get in as much depth as we may have at the end of the show. The architecture and design has kind of grown quite a bit, and as you can see from our extended team and our partners, the way that we do it, it's changed a little bit. The way that we've grown, like I said, the teamwork has really changed between those vendors, and there's literally stuff that they're doing that developers are working on because what they see at this show. There's things that are coming to those products because of what we do at Black Hat. This is such a unique opportunity in the sense that, I won't dig into architecture specifically, but what I'm going to say is that we don't block anything. There is nothing on this network that will block going outbound. If there's viruses flying and stuff like that, Trojanware, malware, ransomware, whatever ware you want to think of, we don't stop that. The reason being, if you're in a training class, which we also have a 4-day training class this week, which is the first time that we've done that at an international show, offensive security teaching all their Cali stuff is they're throwing all kinds of crazy stuff at their labs and stuff like that. So if we started blocking anything that looked potentially dangerous in a normal enterprise, we would ruin somebody's training experience and they'd want those thousands of dollars back. So that's not something that we can do. However, what we can do is know what the quote unquote normal may be, which is everything.
Baseline bad. Baseline bad. Like, what is the normal amount of bad for the network? And whether something is like an outlier of the bad.
What we've done, though, and the way that we've decided to do this is just kind of track it and tell you some things. And we'll tell you some of the fun stuff that we've seen in the past and even stuff that we've seen here. But what we do is we really try to understand what's going on, know what things are changing, that it's a training class, et cetera. And when we will start blocking stuff, if it's anything that will affect the infrastructure, if it's anything that's targeted us or registration, which is our crown jewels, of course we're going to do something then. But everything else, I can't tell you the amount of porn and ransomware and everything else that's downloaded, people's cryptocurrencies. We were doing an investigation today to see if there was anything going on with the cryptocurrencies that we're seeing, not because we're worried that you guys are mining. If you want to do that, that's, again, I don't care. But with the new cryptoware where they're you're doing that unwillingly and they're using your processor or whatever to mine that cryptocurrency, that's what we were more concerned about. It looked like everything was opt-in, so you guys are all about the cryptocurrency, the prawn and everything else. We won't stop anything. That's what I'm going to say because of those other reasons with trainings and everything else that people are doing until you start hurting us. So don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Yeah. So again, part of the design of the way that things have been set up is to where we are writing every packet that traverses the network to disk. Like, that's not like a big brothery thing. We don't keep that data. As soon as the show is over, it gets deleted. But what we're doing is essentially it's a window into a network where the users on that network should know better, right? I mean, like, we're all in the security industry if you're here at Black Hat, and so chances are you should have an idea about what security means. And what we see often is that even we have plenty of room for improvement. And so how can we make the same, claim for our users? We complain a lot about what our users are doing, but we're not even following some of the best practices ourselves. So that NetWitness platform is there for us to be able to dig in and see what types of behavior are going on out there that are outside, again, of the baseline bad, and then say, well, how long has this been going on? It's been really useful in the past where we've seen machines come onto the network and they're already compromised, but we don't know that initially until we go back into NetWitness and look and say, okay, when did this activity start? And it's like, oh, it started the moment the box arrived on the network. So it looks like that compromise took place prior to landing at Black Hat. We will often also see something where that does happen, where someone gets compromised, and we can say, okay, well, we know that IP address range should belong in this classroom or these classrooms. Let's go see if we can find that individual and be like, hey, we need to talk to you for a second. And we pull them aside and say, like, we have some bad news. And so that's useful. I mean, what's that? Yes.
We have some other ways that we're doing that. I'll get into some. Finish your thought, Griff, and I'll talk about a couple of things.
Yeah. So Steve, MF Fink over here, who's our lead architect, he was yelling out splash page. So the thing is, we saw something this year at the US show that was straight up like somebody's mobile phone getting owned and then immediately starting to have data exfiltrated off of it. And so that was not a lab in a class. We knew, like, we're like, okay, this is bad. So,
but then we also can't pinpoint necessarily to the extent that we wanted to.
So they're wandering the entire floor. Like, we have no idea. This is a mobile phone on the wireless network. We can't find them. So, so in this case, you know, Steve, who did you work with to do that? Was it Palo? So Palo Alto. So he's already done it here apparently as well at them, where they saw something on the mobile phone, and so they put a splash page up. Basically, any website they try to browse to, instead they get a captive portal type of situation where it says, like, please come to the NOC.
Come say hello. And it's not anything that you have to put
it.
anything in. You can hit OK, and if you want to keep walking along your merry way and do nothing, that's up to you. But we know that you're in trouble. You may not, but we want to let you know. So it's just a basic HTTP intercept that we just say, come visit us. And the other thing that I will say to that, though, very specifically, that I want to kind of stress, being that everything is captured and stored to disk during the show, we do not and will not ever decrypt any of the traffic that comes from the attendees. There's nothing that we want to see. There's nothing that we care about. We would prefer that we had nothing to look at if you guys encrypted everything. VPN, and you'll see some stats coming up that's not always the case.
Yeah. So when we were initially putting together this talk, we figured, okay, well, we're doing it. Black Hat asked us to do it in day one, like I said, instead of an end of show briefing, to let you guys know that the NOC is open, that you can come in and look around. We were like, okay, well, should we give stats up until that point? Like, and so in the end, we decided, like, you know what, we're gonna keep quiet on the current stats for now. What we can tell you, you know, is that, you know, Bart mentioned it earlier, like, we're seeing, like, you know, I think it was six different Monero miners that were out there. We weren't sure if it was like a lab that somebody was doing in a training class or whatever, but it looks like it is not. There's a lot of, obviously, because again it was training, a lot of malware, like known malicious domains, like in the thousands that were being accessed throughout the last several days. Somebody yesterday was downloading just gigs of porn. I mean, gigs and gigs. Like, we're like, dude.
We know our community, but you guys
Yeah,
are crazy.
it's like, y'all nasty. And so yeah, we saw that. We also saw, like, somebody was, it looked like essentially trying to, like, mirror, like, MangaFox, if you're familiar with the website. That's why I have Hatsune Miku up there is that I want to see who got excited, and I'm like, that's the guy downloading all the manga. But yeah, so we've seen some stuff that's interesting. If you want to talk about it in more detail, again, we'll be in there doing a tour after this, and then there will also be 2 tours tomorrow. What time are those?
10:30, 2:30.
Oh, Marissa was like, ooh, you need to know. That's Marissa. She's our keeper. She make.
That's the appropriate word.
What's that?
Keeper.
Keeper. It is. All right, so that's mostly it on how the network is stood up and stuff. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the kind of stuff that we normally see. So it's story time.
And this is where you can laugh. And again, these are things that we've obviously seen and continue to see. But again, as the security community, we're often surprised that we do see some of this stuff at Black Hat.
Right. So, you know, we were talking about VPNs and using VPNs and making sure that, you know, you're encrypting your traffic and stuff, and that looks
It doesn't look bad down there, so I'm sorry.
Sorry. You could kind of make out what some of those were. But anyway, what this is all of the clear text passwords that were traversing the network. So
They
everything
look like awesome generated random passwords.
Yeah, some of them are really, like, complex. I mean, look at that one up on the side. Like, look on the upper right there. That one's long. Like, some of these are actually genuinely complex passwords, but it doesn't matter if you send it across the wire in the clear. So again,
What about wireless in the clear? Not the wire.
oh man, That's deep. I'm gonna have to think on that for a while. If the passwords are flying through my body because they're transmitted by radio, do I have the right then to read those passwords?
Your body.
I'm just wondering. So make sure that you set your stuff up correctly. Some of these are just mistakes. People have misconfigured things. Even, I'm just going to call out our own people. No, don't wince. Don't wince.
Go for it.
This is how I do. Look at Kim. She's like, no. So we even had our own, the corporate part of Black Hat. There was an individual who had a very complex password that they sent across the wire in the clear. And we were like, that's clear text. You're at Black Hat. Are you insane?
That's how breaches happen.
Yeah. I think he actually said, you don't know my password. And Steve was like, there it is. And he's like, that's always fun when the face gets made. So use the VPN. Always use a VPN, but configure it correctly. Make sure you know what you're doing. In this particular case, this is the handshake taking place back and forth in the association of a VPN. However, it's sending all of the credentials for that in the clear, and then just to make sure, it sends back everything again and says, just so I got this right, is this your password? No, whatever.
But then it encrypts all your traffic.
It establishes a VPN session, and you're off to the races. A little late, a couple packets too late, but yeah. So again, a lot of this, can just be ignorance. My recommendation is always that when you're doing these things or using different products and stuff, to do some packet sniffing of your own, do some endpoint investigation of your own, see what the software that you're using does, so that when you go out on a network, even at a Starbucks or something like that, or in a hotel, that what data it is that you're transmitting and whether or not you need to be worried about it.
To the point of our keynote, we're so trustworthy of those vendors and those tools that we use. It's a VPN, so it's going to protect us, so we trust it's a VPN. I go Google best VPN and I buy the best VPN. If you have no idea how it's working and you haven't looked for yourself and you haven't understood what's happening, don't trust. That's why nerds are weird.
And that's the thing. I don't expect that our users are going to get on their networks and do a packet capture and take a look at whatever. But at the very least, we should be doing that. If we're
especially when you're coming to Black Hat.
Yeah. Who's watching the watchers? We should be taking a good look at ourselves. So that was pretty funny. We thought that. I think that was a U.S. show this year. What we saw that. This one's fun. So this was at the London show. I can't show you what we saw, but I can talk about it a little bit. So this
was actually a year and a half ago.
Yeah, not this past London show, the year prior. So, but for instance, again, not using secure channels and things. So we will sometimes, just randomly pull images from the stream and throw it up on a monitor. We see some pretty funny stuff. Bart was doing an interview with CNN one time at the U.S. show, and while he was talking to the reporter, a blow-up doll came up on the screen, and then they both just started cracking up, and they used it in the piece. It actually went on air just like that. I was pretty pleased with that. But so in this situation, we start seeing
ads.
What? Yeah, ads or pictures of lovely ladies in various states of dress, and we're like, what is going on? Because it just was flooding.
It didn't stop.
Yeah, it was going and going on. And we laughed at first, and then after a little while, we're like, man, what are they looking at? And so we went and investigated.
Well, we knew that.
Yeah. So we went and looked, and so what it was is they were on Backpage.com, which was they were essentially shopping for an escort or
a friend.
Yes, a friend, some companionship for the evening. And it went on and on and on. And I think it was Steve who got he was like, I have to know. I have
Who
to
did he
know
choose?
who it is, you know? And it said something like, you know, Gary's iPhone or something like that, like Stefan, there you go, Stefan's iPhone. And so we're like, okay, he's like, I know what classroom it's in. I've got to see if I can like find a name tag or something. Who's Stefan, you know? And so he goes to the classroom, he's looking around, wherever, no sign of Stefan. He's just like, oh, all right, well, that was a great idea. And then turns to leave, and there's the
AV, I think it was an
guy
AV guy.
in the back. Not you guys. Shh, maybe those guys, I don't know. But and the AV guy in the back has his name on his shirt, and it says Stefan. So he's like, you dirty bird.
And he's scrolling on
Yeah, he's still on his phone,
left.
shopping.
Didn't
So,
find
yeah.
out.
So
Didn't
that
find
was-
out who though.
That was one of those. Yeah, that was one of those things where it was just like, man, like use a VPN, like. Or,
It's almost more just entertainment,
At
you
least
know,
SSL.
obviously. But again, these are all things that apply to using VPN and encryption,
yeah,
etc.
That's just embarrassing information, not potentially putting you on the 10 o'clock news information.
Unless you're a politician.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. So we talk about a little bit about patch management. So these are the stats from the US show this year. And what you can see of the top 10 websites that as far as the amount of data that
Windows,
was
Windows,
transferred.
Microsoft, Kali, Windows, Apple, Microsoft, Ubuntu, Microsoft. We
Right.
tell everybody to patch.
They
Just not
apparently
here.
patch on site, which again, just 24 hours earlier, and you're in a much better situation than being like, oh crap, I'm a Black Hat. I got to patch my stuff.
We're talking, I mean, just quick, 500 gigs, 400 gigs right there. That's
a lot of patching. It's a significant amount of patching. We're glad that you're patching. Just plan ahead a little. Just a little bit of planning. So the thing is, we have seen essentially similar behavior this year. I was just looking at some of the top access sites, and you can go in, again, go in the NOC and look at the displays and stuff, and you'll see what some of those are, depending on the dashboards that are currently displayed. And there is a significant amount, again, of updates that are going on. So, yeah.
Thank you.
nothing-
The Kali one might not be the same if they're doing it in class, etc. But I mean, still, it's still not here.
So, all right, let's talk a little bit about popularity. So one of the things that we had done at the US show was we were looking at the amount of traffic going to other countries and, you know, what the most popular country was, you know, on this particular graph. So we excluded the US because that was just, you know, like wah, like it was this giant amount of the traffic. And once we had,
Statistical anomaly.
yeah, so once we had removed that, we were looking at all the rest of the countries, and we just kept it up, and it had been up for a few days. And then one day during the briefings, like all of a sudden the pie chart, essentially one section of it just started to grow. And we're like, what is happening there? And it straight up Pac-Man'd out. Like it was a significant portion of the pie was suddenly one country, and we're like, what is that? And we look and we're like, oh, it's Iran. Someone is scanning all of Iran. And so we're like, thanks for putting us on that radar, guys. Really appreciate that. But yeah, so it was legit, the amount
Somebody
of
got mad.
traffic skyrocketed. We were like, all right, well, that's cool.
Scans are so common. Obviously, with trainings, you're going to see a lot of that. But how many times we see just a random machine start scanning the entire internet from Black Hat is weird.
Yeah.
There's tons of scans, obviously, but yeah, Iran, that's not one that we necessarily want to.
And so and that's like, so I talked about OIP, one of the screens that was in there. You'll see it when we go in. It looks very pew pew pew, but it's it is genuinely just like giving us an idea of the amount of traffic going from host to host. And scans show up on that really easily. Maybe one will be going on, or we can start one when we do the tour. But you'll see like one host, and then traffic will just go out from it like a starburst. And so like we can see them fairly easily. Denial of service attacks will also, they'll light up like a lightsaber on that visual. So we have some idea when it's taking place to go then look in further detail in some of the other tools. All right, so this one was interesting. One of the things that we're looking at will often be anomalous traffic. So we have a couple folks in there who are doing, active threat hunting throughout the course of Black Hat, and they're looking for things like, direct to IP communication, and that's, that's not normal. Most people don't say like, oh man, I found the dopest website. It's 22.63.215. Like it's just you tell them what the website is and you go. So direct to IP communication is something that we always take a look at. And so in this case, one of the guys in the NOC was looking at a direct IP communication and was seeing a bunch of 404s return. But what he noticed is that the 404s were returning and they were always a different size. Like it was a different 404 for the same site every time. And what it turned out to be was a particular variant of Emotet that was using a vulnerability that had been released the same day. Like, so the amount of, I know my eyes were closed that time because I saw the orange piece. Here, ready? Get a picture of me. That's what I'm talking about. Profile pic. So we're talking about something that had been released and then was actively being used on the Black Hat network within, I think it was 12 hours, a 12-hour window.
Which even to this is very interesting, and some points that I can even drag back a little bit. We've seen some of this, and if it's a 0 day, that obviously can't affect us infrastructurally, is what I would say at Black Hat. However, what I would say is that we have actually seen somebody come stand up on a stage and say, this gear is broken, and it's something that we're using in the NOC, and kind of run away and fix that. So these are certainly things that do happen and that we have to react to as well. But these are very interesting to see when it's something that's literally released that day and already being used that day on the network. These are the kinds of things that our partners and teams love to see, because again, you wouldn't necessarily see that sitting at Joe Blow's office in just a normal enterprise. And if you do, a lot of times that would be blocked by certain automation things and et cetera, but to see this kind of stuff in the wild and running 12 hours after it's released is very intriguing to us and very fun to watch. So,
yeah, I think it's fine to call out that situation. I mean, we can name names on that one because this is like
it was fixed. It was certainly fixed.
A true example of the partnership that we're talking about here was that we had a speaker who got up on stage and was like, this thing is broken and it's used by these vendors, and one of those vendors was Ruckus. It was the wireless access points that we were using at the US show. So this happens at the US show. We're like, well,
our jaw drops a little bit.
Yeah, we're like, well,
of all things, we see that all day. We're a Black Hat, but when somebody says, "Oh, but Ruckus too," we're like,
we're like, damn. So we talk to them. They're immediately responsive. They're like, all right, we're working on something right now. Within a very, very short window, like 2 to 3 hours, they were like, we have created a patch specifically for Black Hat. Like we can deploy it today, like tonight, as soon as the attendees have, mostly left the network, so we weren't affecting the experience throughout the day. And then that night, everything was reflashed and secure. And it was before, obviously, that went out to the public, but they were like, we know that this is a critical thing, and we're partners with you guys. We want to make sure that the experience is a good one. And so the patch was put together for us and then deployed by the Ruckus team. And so like immediate response from the vendor in that particular case, which was awesome.
It's great to talk about features and stuff that they provide, but that kind of stuff for you guys, obviously, and even for us, and our sleep at night is it's very good to work with these partners as we do, and again, be so integrated.
Yeah, Like, that's the difference between us like panicking and being up all night trying to figure out a solution, and then just being like, no, it's cool, go to the bar, we got this, Like, so here's another situation. One of the things that we look at is protocols that aren't often used by normal users. Maybe that's not so much the case with something like Black Hat, but also protocols or things that we might see that would be command and control traffic. And so in this case, we were looking at IRC traffic. There were some guys chatting in a channel or whatever, and what they say is, do you still have that RF pager script? Roto Rooter has a hack RF now as well. I'm thinking it might be worth trying it out at the Luxor, which is the hotel next door to the Mandalay Bay where Black Hat USA takes place. It's also an MGM property. So we work on site with the MGM team every day. Like in the morning, we'll like brief each other on things that took place or might be taking place. And then they have a call with their competitors as well. So they get on the phone with like Caesars Entertainment and The Win and all those guys, and they all talk because they're like Black Hat and DEF CON are in town, and so they coordinate throughout that week security disclosures. And so so in this case, they were talking about using this not just on a Black Hat network, but going and using this against
it's the casino. Like they're walking the casino floor, and those guys don't like that.
But using it like against civilians or whatever. And so in this case, we let them know it's never a good idea to mess with the security team of a casino. Like that's pro-life tip. Don't mess with casino security. Like while the nerd security guys may not be the ones to kneecap you, there are cameras everywhere in a casino except for the one place they're going to take you. So it's like, just don't even mess around. And this one, so devices. So we often find things that the attacks aren't limited just to the network itself. Sometimes they are, physical attacks. When I say physical, I don't necessarily even mean like people trying to sneak into the conference and whatever. That type of stuff happens and it's outside of our scope. But what we do see is like people will come into the conference and they'll throw like a USB drive into a training class. Like they'll sprinkle USB drives around.
That's not a sarcastic statement. Literally, he was walking down the hallway, going,
like throwing them into the classroom,
tossing them into classrooms, hoping somebody would be like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
This particular device here is just, it was basically the cheapest rogue access point you could make. Like that, even the battery is being held by a 3D printed battery case, which seems a little hardcore. Like I figure you could probably buy little battery holders for like 13 cents from somewhere, but they were like, nah, I'm gonna print it. And so they did. And this was found in a planter. In one of the
buried
planters.
Even a little bit. Like it was intentionally, obviously hidden a little bit, but
yeah.
It was obviously something that was done on the cheap. Knowing that they weren't going to get it back and just seeing what they could get from there. We had a couple guys play with it. There wasn't anything too crazy that came out of it, I think. They did a little, we had some hardware guys on our team that did a little bit of reverse engineering, and it was just obviously just that. And like you said, a cheap rogue access point that they never expected to get back, and we were able to find it, but that one was not easy. We chased that for a little bit.
Yeah, that board is like $10 or something like that, but we're still like, wee, free hardware. Like I don't care. If it's free, it's me. I'll take it. Like it's like, you want to leave your hardware around, we'll take that. What we thought was funny about it though is that, so we have like our friend on the right here. It's funny because he's completely decked out in Black Hat gear, but he's not on the NOC team. He just really likes.
He knows some people.
So yeah. So what that glowing green thing is he calls it the Wi-Fi cactus, and the Wi-Fi cactus is 25 Wi-Fi pineapple tetras, and they're all like scanning channels, and so there's 50 channels simultaneously, like and it was to basically, I don't know, footprint
stitched together.
Like, yeah.
Well, even more than that, it was the communication, because you start channel hopping and you lose that. His whole idea was, well, if I just watch every channel, it doesn't matter where you go, kind of thing.
Most of them, at least.
Mostly. There's a couple, but he mostly can get that. But they're all reporting. He's got a NOC That's like on a hiking backpack.
Yeah.
That he just carries it around, and it's all running off of a NOC that's sitting on top of it. But
Yeah, the stuffed gorilla
and a
is
car
actually wearing
battery
the
hanging
backpack.
from it. It was not light either.
So the stuffed gorilla wearing the power glove and wizard hat is actually wearing the backpack at that point, but he would put it on and had this battery hanging like underneath all of these pineapples and was wandering around. It got quite a few pictures taken of it in the hallways and in the business hall.
He's even done some stuff with Hack 5 now with Darren.
If you're
and some
interested in
videos,
like
certainly.
the craziness that is the Wi-Fi cactus, I think if you just get on Twitter and search for hashtag Wi-Fi cactus, you'll see a bunch of stuff. And he's giving some talks about it now. But this was like its debut. Like it was like it's coming out. The Wi-Fi cactus. So we thought that this device on the left was super cute when we're like, well, we invited our friend and he brought this device. So that's all we have right now for stories. Like, do you guys have questions? Any questions about the network, how it stood up, stuff that we've seen, my room number, anything like that?
I'll take that piece.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Are you going to start tracking IoT devices in the future, plotting that on the screen?
So the questions are, we going to start tracking IoT devices in the future and plotting those? So if they're on our network, we already are. There's no doubt. Now, as far as Bluetooth and such, kind of. We've talked about that a little bit. However, to an extent, what does that affect us and what does that provide us outside of being nerds? So I'd love to get tons of technology just to play with and be me here. However, justifying it and what that provides us as far as security, we've kind of had that discussion, and we have had some discussions with vendors and even a little bit of test runs on some stuff. But as of right now, we're not doing anything Bluetooth. But again, anything IoT that touches the network is any network communication is absolutely already
Something
tracked.
transitions the network at all, then we see it based on
Wink,
the fact
wink.
that we are throwing like the the infrastructure of whatever venue we're at away essentially, and only using the wires in their walls. So like again, we set up the core, and every device, every endpoint, well, you know what I mean, like every access point and every endpoint is communicating back to us. And so so yeah, if it's on the network, we can see it.
But there certainly are other talks and
Yeah.
thoughts. Go ahead.
Speaking of rapid points, access points, do you have like a policy how you search them, like you're going and scanning radio channel, or it's just like?
So we don't have to go wandering around looking for stuff because Ruckus has the ability to detect rogue access points and basically DOS them off the network.
There certainly are
so-
some other things there, and we do watch that stuff, and again, some other talks that have been had there. But yeah, Ruckus does a very good job, and again, as a partnership, they have people from their team that are is
Yeah.
Mo in here? Of course not. So they do a very good job of watching that. But yeah, that's her livelihood. So
Yeah, so so that's how sometimes that we'll end up knowing like what area something's in, like being able to go out and be like, we know that there's something at least in this area, and it doesn't appear to be moving at all. So let's go see if somebody's dropped
the
something.
little rogue AP, we kind of had an idea. There was no real triangulation, but obviously the beacons in the areas. we
No,
kinda knew.
one question. No. Okay, now go ahead.
Any statistics like 10 points a day or something like this?
Say it again if you're really loud.
Any statistics how much points you find every day?
Rogue APs that we see each day.
Yeah, well, not.
I would. I mean,
I think
tens is even some days kind of high. Here, it's probably high. I don't think the rogue APs isn't where I see too much anymore. There are certainly plenty, and we do see enough in the U.S. But I mean, 10s to 20s, yeah, I'd say for even maybe the whole U.S. show in some cases. But
We do have those stats. They're just not in these slides. So if you want to see like historical on it, I think I can pull up the stuff from the U.S. show afterward and let you know.
You mentioned kind of a fun story that you guys saw how it started with the crypto mining, I guess.
Like, what about the story? Like, well, are you saying about like the integration of?
Well, I was saying, yeah, kind of a fun story how that.
This isn't your talk, Jim. Shut up. No, sorry. I'm just playing. Oh man, I love you.
Here's the mic, here's
I'm
the
just
mic.
teasing. I think actually what probably is more interesting, and I should call out, is so he's talking about a particular situation where we did see like actual infection of somebody's machines with Monero miners. But what is cool about those type of things is that, again, we talk about the team or the extended team. Even at this show, we have like the Palo Alto guys, like they're working side by side with RSA. They're writing different things for each other's platforms and working together. And so their stuff is getting better and more closely integrated show to show, because as they impact real world situations together, they're like, oh, it would have been great if we could have seen this. And they're like, well, I will now go create that thing. And so we actually, like from the RSA team, there's actually a guy from their product management team who comes out to every show so that he can just be like, got to do this, got to do this, got to do this.
And
So,
we literally see new features that
like roll out
we
show to
have
show. Impacted.
requested or been because of Black Hat that we see from show to show that are added because of these things that we see at the show.
Yeah. So,
Any other questions?
You guys said your iPhone traffic to disk, so how many terabytes?
Do you have, the US
I
is
don't.
crazy. Here's a little bit smaller, but the US is,
what's that? Yeah, the gear itself is 52 terabytes, but how much?
how much do we write? Do you remember how much we write?
I know what.
Show in the US, we exceeded it.
Oh, okay. So we actually exceeded the capacity, the 52 terabyte capacity. at
We
the
did
US
start
show.
rewriting at the US.
Yeah, I think we ended up killing like the first day of training or something.
Metadata, but not the raw package.
Yeah.
The first day after.
Yeah,
So
it's
US.
much easier to keep tons of metadata than it is every packet. But yeah, I guess the US show. Well, again, I can pull that up. We have that information.
Obviously, it's much
I
different,
want
but
to say it was like 89 terabytes.
the bandwidth is another thing too. We would blow that out in Vegas. So we actually have a gig. I didn't mention that. We actually have a gig circuit here for My Republic, and we have 2 gigs in Vegas. So it's pretty, Vegas. If you give them enough bandwidth, they'll use it, and they do.
That one guy's
we-
using it to download.
Somebody's
apps,
using
yeah.
that gig here too, you guys. But obviously that plays a factor into it as well. But it's certainly quite a bit. 52 terabytes in a week is certainly quite a bit, and we rolled that, and it's, I would say, obviously a portion here. Anybody else? Sweet, come visit us.
Fine. Go.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.